Hello, everybody. Michael Tracy here. So, interesting news this morning. Recall in the past couple weeks there have been a spate of bomb threats at Jewish institutions in the United States. So, JCCs, other institutions having to do with American Jewish community life. Those bomb threats caused a scare, and for some good reason. It's obviously very disconcerting if you're a parent and you have a child who is in one of these schools or community centers and has to be escorted out under threat of a potential bomb attack. Of course, no bomb attacks were actually carried out, but the threat being phoned in is worrisome enough. Around the time this happened, the narrative became that an anti-Semitic climate had been fomented in the United States, and this was attributed to Trump in some respects. It was attributed to the movement that he had engendered, and these bomb threats that were called into various Jewish centers was put on the doorstep of Trump. He was blamed for sure, to the point that eventually Trump was badgered enough by the media that he made a formal statement denouncing this, because the idea was that he hadn't been forthright enough in his condemnations of these threats, and so on and so forth. Well, it turns out that this narrative, based on the information that we have available to us at this point, this narrative was essentially a concoction. It was essentially bogus. The people who have now been arrested for being the perpetrators of these threats, and again, these threats are definitely serious crimes, and whoever carries them out should be punished for sure, so that they stop happening. But the people who have now been arrested were, a few weeks ago, Juan Thompson, who is a left-wing reporter at The Intercept and was fired for fabricating stories, and later became extremely unhinged. He was arrested for apparently doing some of these threats in a copycat manner. And now, today, the breaking news is that a 19-year-old Israeli Jewish man in Israel has been arrested by Israeli authorities and accused of being behind these threats, which is incredible. And if there's any doubt, the police chief for Jerusalem says, quote, he's the guy who was behind the JCC threats. Okay, so put it this way. If what we know now was known at the time that there was a huge media frenzy stoked around these incidents, would the narrative have been any different? Would people perhaps have been more circumspect about the grand themes that they're willing to extrapolate based on these handful of incidents? It was always possible that a Trump supporter had done them, sitting in his basement somewhere and thinking he was really clever and disruptive by phoning in threats to various Jewish centers. But if that had been the case, would it have been warranted to postulate a huge surge of anti-Semitic sentiment in the United States? Maybe, maybe not. The point is, you want to be cautious about this. You should not just instinctively proclaim some grand new narrative because it seems to comport with your pre-existing political beliefs in the moment, and it has the short-term advantage of, I don't know, making Trump look bad, making Republicans look bad, making people you dislike look culpable. Because what frequently ends up happening is that rashness comes and bites you comes back to bite you. So again, we don't know exactly what this person's motives were, but at the very least, the idea that he would have been the paradigmatic right-wing person who has been animated by Trump and has been impelled by the Trump presidency to go and call in bomb threats to Jewish centers, that theory has essentially been debunked. So When I raised these questions at the time, so this was probably, I don't know, 3 weeks or so ago now, maybe a little bit more, I was relentlessly pilloried by people online to the point where I had to spend basically a full day rebutting the most preposterous criticism of my motives for simply urging some discretion here and cautioning against the immediate assignment of blame, because it happens to fit, the narrative that people want to advance. And this was a really powerful narrative. It was advanced by the most mainstream media organs in the country, and it eventually made its way up to the president. So if that narrative is now proven, at the very least, almost entirely bogus, maybe people should try to reevaluate what caused them to jump so eagerly into that narrative pool, let's say. That was a little bit of a weird metaphor, but you get what I mean. So I will link to the Associated Press article on this development, and I'll link to the piece that I wrote on Medium at the time of the initial furor, which engendered huge pushback. I have no desire to claim vindication, but I think if you go back and read what I wrote then, you'll see that maybe it was, the caution that I was encouraging was warranted, and that the frenzy that was on display a few weeks ago was probably not with sufficient basis. So that's the point I have to make for now, and I will talk to you all later.